Professor Metzala and Ms. Lenehan. Ms. Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to appear before you today to address Bill C-35. I am joining you today from the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I'm pleased to be part of this critical discussion to advance foundational legislation for the provision of high-quality, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare in Canada. However, this bill lacks the legislative safeguards needed for an inclusive early learning and childcare system in our country to be fully realized. Inclusion Canada was founded over 60 years ago, primarily by mothers who, when wanting their children with intellectual disabilities to be educated in local schools, were rebuffed. And still, the right to inclusive education eludes us. Today, we are a national federation of 13 provincial, territorial, and 300 local associations supporting children and adults with an intellectual disability and their families. Inclusive early learning and childcare benefits all children. Unfortunately, irrespective of the research as to the benefits of inclusive early learning for all children, children with disabilities continue to remain excluded or segregated. Bill C-35 is momentous legislation that has the potential to change the lives of children and families in Canada by enshrining into law high-quality, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare. However, simply referencing inclusion and disability, as the legislation does, is insufficient. Critical amendments are needed. Too often, inclusion does not apply to individuals with an intellectual disability. The majority of school-age children with intellectual disabilities are not educated in regular classrooms, and the majority of adults with intellectual disabilities remain unemployed. Inclusion is only a slogan when it is not explicitly defined and without funding and practices for it to be realized. While Inclusion Canada supports Bill C-35, we know without it being strengthened, inclusive early learning and childcare will remain limited, with exclusion and segregation continuing. Bill C-35 must clearly define early learning and childcare principles and practices that are inclusive of children with disabilities. High-quality, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare not only have a significant impact on a child's life, future education and employment and well-being, but also have significant impact on the entire family as well as society. The cost of exclusion is high. Access to inclusive early learning and childcare for children is a fundamental human right. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, both of which Canada has ratified, recognize the right of all children, including children with disabilities, to access inclusive education and learning without discrimination. Some suggested amendments from the comprehensive briefs we have submitted include strengthen references to Canada's commitment and obligations to the UN CRPD in the purpose of the proposed legislation, not just the preamble. Include a definition of inclusion in the preamble to ensure it's clear and fundamentally more than just access. Ensure it's expressly inclusive of children with disabilities and meets the full intent of Article 24 of the CRPD. Have the UNCRPD inform the interpretation and administration of the legislation in its entirety and any subsequent regulations. Strengthen the guiding principles, particularly 7.1c, to ensure inclusion means children with disabilities, which requires providing the supports needed to ensure equal opportunity and access. Require provinces and territories to ensure they collect data and report on key metrics, measuring the progress being made in establishing accessible, affordable, and fully inclusive early learning. Bill C-35 must be specific in its commitments to inclusion. The policy choices made now will impact the future of our children and their families. Our vision is one where families of children with an intellectual disability can approach any child care center on any corner of any street, and their child will be welcomed and provided high quality, inclusive early learning and child care. Parents of children with disabilities should be able to access the workforce on an equal basis with others. Please consider our amendments. High quality, fully inclusive early learning and childcare is a necessity. All children deserve the opportunity to thrive. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carr.